Hello and welcome to IP Study Video Lectures. And today we are going to discuss Chapter 6 from Grade 8 Social Science, and the name of the chapter is Education During British Rule. In this chapter we are going to discuss few important topics like education in India before the British, a report of William Adam, the modern system of education, Orientalist and Anglicist, and lastly national education. So when we talk about the education in India before the British, all of us might have this question: what was the quality of education in India, or how was teaching and learning done in India before the arrival of British? So all of this confusion or doubts will clear in this chapter. So first topic is education in India before the British. So before the arrival of British in India, the system of education in India was very different. Okay, so when British or before British came to India, in India there were Pathshalas and Maktabs for primary education, while on the other hand for higher secondary education there were tolls and madrasas. Okay, so the primary education made the student literate enough to maintain accounts. So the basic knowledge of accounts, of maintaining accounts, it was given, and only few students opted for higher secondary. That means large number of students, they went for primary education, but they did not continue their education further or higher secondary. Okay, and what were the different subjects that were taught in these Pathshalas, or tolls or maktabs? Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian, religion, literature, logic, medicine and astronomy. So all these were taught. However, scientific research and thinking was absent at that time. Okay, so that means all these subjects were taught based on the scriptures or things written on the basis of old texts. So on the basis of old texts, all this education was done. Okay, there was no modern education before the arrival of British. So as a result, there was an atmosphere of superstition and backward social custom prevailed in our society. Okay, so there was a atmosphere where there was huge number of superstition and all those backward customs like sati, child marriage. So all these actually existed in India. Okay, so education, when we talk about in India before the arrival of British, it was very unorganized and it was not supported or backed by the states. So now let us see another topic, that is report of William Adam. So William Adam, he was a Scottish educator and he did a survey in which he realized that there was more than 1 lakh Pathshala in Bengal and Bihar alone. More than 1 lakh Pathshala. However, in each Pathshala there were not more than 20 students. So only few number of students studied in each Pathshala. But if we see the total number of children who were receiving education from all these institutions were more than 20 lakhs, because 1 lakh Pathshala and in each Pathshala 20 students. So more than 20 lakh students were actually studying in this. Okay. So when we talk about these Pathshalas, it was not established by any ruler or any state or government. It was mostly done established through the charity given by wealthy people, or because of the cooperation and coordination among the local community, or even the teachers. They sometimes started Pathshala on their own. Okay. So when we talk about the characteristic of feature of this Pathshala, it was very flexible. Okay, there were no schools, dedicated school. There were no classrooms like we see in our school. We have chair, tables, right, blackboard. There were no such things. Okay, so classes were done mostly under the tree, under the banyan tree, or near the village shop, or even at the home of the guru. So there were no dedicated class. Wherever the teachers and student met, classes was mostly done there, and there were no grades. Like we have, right, first grade, second grade, third grade, we have progression, right? At that time, there were no grades. All the students, they sat together and teaching was mostly done individually. So teachers interacted individually with every student based on their level of thinking and understanding. So for example, a 8 years old student, teacher might teach something different compared to a student who is 15 years old. And when we talk about the fees, so it varied, okay. So the wealthy students, they paid more fees. On the other hand, people who came from normal background, they paid less amount of money or fee. So let us see how a teaching done. So teaching was mostly done orally. There were no system of writing down. There were no textbooks, there were no syllabus. So whatever I know, I teach you verbally or orally, and student also memorize orally. Okay. Now, this system was very much flexible depending on that situation, because most of the student came from background of farmers. So the schools or the Pathshala, it remained closed during the harvesting system, because the children, they helped their parents in the harvesting time. So as a result, the Pathshala reopened again when the harvesting season was done. So the system was very flexible. There were no dedicated schools, classes, grades. There were no examination. The teaching was mostly done verbally, and the fees were also variable. So this was the situation of education before the arrival of British in India. Now let us see modern system of education. So we all know that British came in India as a trader, as merchants. So initially when they came, their most objective, the most important objective was to earn money and profit through trade and commerce. But once they started to annex or grab the areas or kingdoms in India, they realized that they have to teach the local Indians if they want to rule there or administer properly or smoothly. Okay, so thus they thought that it is necessary that they bring modern Western education in India. So there was their hidden motive. It was not their goodwill gesture or they wanted to teach Indians. No, there was a motive behind establishing or bringing modern Western education in India. So as a result, Calcutta Madrasa was set up in 1781 by Warren Hastings, and 10 years later in 1791 Banaras Sanskrit College was established by Jonathan Duncan. And similarly, many Christian missionaries also started schooling in India. So the motive was not to teach Indians. They only wanted to create a class of clerks who can actually help British administer their rule in India. So now let us have a brief discussion of promotion of education in India. Okay. So the foundation stone was laid by the Charter Act of 1813, and it stated that rupees 1 lakh in total was to be provided for the spread and promotion of education in India. However, there was a problem in this, because there was a confusion of the syllabus and the medium of instruction. So what should be taught? Should traditional Indian education be taught, or modern Western education be taught? And what should be the medium of instruction? Should it be regional or local language, or should it be English? So there was a confusion, and this confusion was only cleared when English Education Act was passed in 1835. In 1835, English Education Act was passed, and the name states English Education. It stated that the 1 lakh rupee, which was provided by the Charter Act of 1813, was to be used to promote modern Western education, and the instruction was English. So medium of instruction was to be English. Okay. So now let us see the Wood's Dispatch of 1854. So the Wood's Dispatch of 1854 is also called the Magna Carta of the Indian education. Okay, it was a series of suggestions given by Lord Charles Wood to Lord Dalhousie in 1854, and these suggestions were to set up education department in India. So there was no education department, right? Because the education in India before British, it was unorganized, right? So education department was to be set up in India. Private colleges and schools were to be given grants of money from the government. Okay. universities were to be established in Chennai, Mumbai and Kolkata. That time Madras, Bombay and Calcutta. Okay. English education service was to be established to recruit teachers that can teach in the government schools and institutions. So, Indian education service was to be established, which was to be used to recruit teachers. In each district, there should be at least one government institution, education institutions. As already discussed, Western education was to be supported and promoted. And lastly, local language and regional language was also be taught, but the medium of instruction should be in English. So this was done so that British would have a class of Indians who would be eligible or who can actually do the clerical work of the British, because it was a cost cutting for British, because it was very expensive for them to recruit Englishmen from Britain. And we all know that the salary or the pay given to the Indian workers was very low compared to the British recruit. So this was done to build a class of clerical group in India. Now let us discuss the major drawbacks of education under the British. Firstly, the growth of education or the spread of education was not uniform at all levels. Okay, the growth or the development of education was different at different levels, and major attention was given to the progression of high school and colleges. Or in other word, we can say primary education was bit neglected under the British. The primary schools, it slowly declined because of lack of funds. As we have already discussed, more attention was given to high school and colleges, thus the primary schools, they suffered. As a result, mass education was neglected. We already discussed that before British, there were Pathshalas, Tolls, Maktabs, where primary education was main focus. But under the British, primary education was neglected. And when we talk about the spread of education, it was limited to certain class of people. We can say mostly middle and upper middle class. And this was mostly done by the supporters of English education in India to create a class of Indians who would think like or who would behave or adopt the habits of Englishmen. This was the aim of the supporters. Why? To create a class of people who would be fit for the clerical work and who would help the British in administration. Fourth point, the education of girls were neglected, and by 1921, out of 100 girls, only 2 women or girls could read and write, or they were literate, only 2 out of 100. And lastly, by 1857, only 3 medical colleges were set up in India, in Calcutta, Bombay and Madras. So these were the major drawbacks of British education in India, or we can say education under British. So now let us discuss Orientalist and Anglicist. So who were Orientalist and Anglicist? Let us discuss Orientalists first. So Orientalists were the class of British officials and scholars who were interested in reading the traditional and ancient Indian literature, philosophy and so on. So they wanted to understand the custom and habits of Indian people. So they were mostly in favor of promoting ancient or traditional Indian education. Okay. Some of the Orientalists were important. Orientalists was Sir William Jones. So he was a judge at a Supreme Court, and he was a linguist. He knew many languages and he was interested in learning languages. And he was the pioneer of this trend. Orientalist, he was the pioneer of this Orientalist trend. He also established the Asiatic Society in 1784 in Calcutta. Okay. Another one is H.T. Colebrook. He is also called the first great Sanskrit scholar in Europe. And he has wrote many about Vedas, and he has also compiled a Sanskrit grammar book. Another one is Nathaniel Halhed. Okay, he also translated Hindu legal code from a Persian version of original Sanskrit into English. So now let us see the Charter Act in detail. So Charter Act was passed by British Parliament in 1813. We have already discussed it. So this act also allowed Christian missionaries to establish education institution in India to promote education. Okay, so this act, it stated that 1 lakh rupees was to be set aside for the improvement and revival of literature and also promotion of knowledge in sciences. However, there was another group who believed that the Oriental or the traditional education or teaching was less, it was not equal, or it was very inferior compared to modern Western education. And this group were called Anglicists. They were in favor of promoting and teaching modern Western education, and the language of instruction should be English. So these were Anglicists. Okay. Some of the important Anglicists were James Mill, who believed that education should be practical and should be useful to the Indians. Okay. And education should be used to make Indians more civilized. So they were in this favor. Their opinions were modern Western education was far superior than the Eastern education or the traditional Indian education. Another one was Thomas Babington Macaulay, and he was also in favor of teaching in English and promotion of Western education in India, and he considered the Western education as far more superior than the traditional Indian education. So now there was a big argument between the Orientalist and the Anglicist regarding the utilization of money, 1 lakh rupees, right? That Orientalists were in favor of promoting traditional Indian education or traditional Indian learning, and the instruction, medium of instruction should be the regional or local. While on the other hand, Anglicists, they were in favor of promoting Western modern education, and the medium of instruction should be English. Okay, so now Anglicists believe that modern Western education can be utilized and promoted so that the Indians, they can benefit from the Western science, literature and philosophy. They held that opinion that it is the Western education that is far more superior. Okay, Macaulay even wrote his minute in which he described that the modern Western education can be used in India so that there can be a class of Indians whose taste, opinions can match with the British, and they can be used as an intermediaries between the British and the local common people. So he was in that favor, and it was because of this minute of Babington, Lord William Bentinck, the then Governor General, passed the English Education Act in 1835, which we already discussed, and this stated that the modern Western education should be promoted, medium of instruction should be in English, and the Oriental education should be stopped. So let us see what was the two main provisions. Firstly, English as a medium of instruction, we already discussed, and the promotion of Oriental institution like the Calcutta Madrasa and the Banaras Sanskrit College was to be stopped. So the Oriental education was stopped by this act, and modern Western education were promoted. So now let us talk about national education. So in November 1905, a conference was held in Bengal regarding national education, and it was regulated by the Indians. As a result, the National Council of Education was set up. Okay, and this led to the creation or establishment of schools and universities both at primary and secondary level. In fact, in the Calcutta session of the Indian National Congress in 1906, the Congress, they were motivated to promote and establish native educational institution throughout the country. And this cause was taken further by two individuals. One is Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore. So, Mahatma Gandhi, when we talk about Mahatma Gandhi and his contribution to education, he debated that the colonial education system that the British has established created a sense of inferiority among the Indians regarding their traditional education. They thought, Indians thought that it was the modern Western education that was superior and better than their own traditional Indian education. So their pride in their culture, customs and their knowledge, it was totally destroyed. So Mahatma Gandhi wanted to create an education system that can actually help Indians regain their dignity and self-respect regarding their education system. So he introduced a concept called Naya Talim in education. So it means elementary education for everyone. Mahatma Gandhi also debated that the Western education focused more on reading and writing and less on verbal knowledge. In fact, he was in the opinion that the Western education valued books more than practical knowledges. He believed that the new education did not focus on the students' spiritual, mental and health, which was very important. He also believed that students should know some vocational and practical knowledge like pottery, weaving, crafting and so on. So he believed all this practical knowledge should be included in the curriculum, which was not there in the modern Western education. Rabindranath Tagore. So he established Vishwabharati at Santiniketan, and he wanted to combine the best part of Western and Indian education system. So the students in Santiniketan, they learned about art, music, dance, science and technology. So let us see the case study of Baroda University and Aligarh University. So in the princely state of Baroda and currently known as Vadodara, it saw immense progress and improvement in the field of education, and this was done by Maharaja Sayajirao Gaikwad III. He introduced free and compulsory primary education, and he also established center of higher education like Baroda College, Kala Bhavan Technical Institute in 1880s. So he was very far-sighted and he wanted to promote education in his princely state. He also organized a public library system in Baroda, and he also took help of an American librarian named M.A. Borden to organize this public library system. And he did this so that he wanted to promote learning or reading among his people. He had a dream of establishing a university at Baroda in which the medium of instruction should be English, and subjects like art, science, technology, all these were taught there. However, his dream was fulfilled after his death when Baroda College was developed into Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. So now let us see Aligarh Muslim University. So Aligarh Muslim University was established in 1920. Before that, it was called Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College, and it was established by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan. So he was a reformist, and he saw the need of education among the Muslim community. He realized that the Muslim community were lagging behind. So he realized that it is necessary that the Muslim community should be introduced to modern education. So with this view, he started this Mohammedan Anglo-Oriental College in 1875. It was a school, later it was transformed into college, and it ultimately became Aligarh Muslim University. So this education institution, it conveyed education in science, humanities, technical subjects, and the medium of instruction was English. Students all over India came here to study, and many leaders of national movement also studied and passed out from here. So Aligarh Muslim University played an important role in educating Muslim and bringing them into mainstream politics. and this institution played important role in the national movement of India, because many students from this university became leaders in the national movement later on. So with this, we have concluded our chapter. So now let us discuss few important points that we have discussed in the lecture. So in the pre-British era, learning and teaching was mostly done in Parsala, tolls, maktabs and madrasas. The British government introduced modern education system in India because it was necessary for them, and they wanted to create a class of clerks can help them in administer the country. Orientalists and Anglicists. There were two groups. Orientalists were in favor of promotion of traditional Indian education, while Anglicists were in favor of promoting modern Western education. Macaulay, an Anglicist, he strongly believed that the Oriental study was very inferior in comparison to European study. The education under the British had many drawbacks, such as the mass education was neglected, the primary education was neglected, education among the girls were neglected. Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore are the two great individuals who promoted mass education and who wanted the best for the Indians. So Gandhiji wanted a system of education that can help Indians regain their sense of dignity and pride in their Indian knowledge. Tagore, on the other hand, wanted to combine the best of traditional Indian education and modern Western education. He also established Vishwa Bharati at Shantiniketan. So with this, we have concluded the chapter. I hope I was able to clarify all your doubts regarding this chapter, and we will again meet in our next lecture. Thank you.